Whoa. What's up, guys? In today's video, we are going to see how bad the damage is on the Skyline. What do you think, Jesus?
We talked about this off camera. We're pretty sure it's head gasket, and if it's the head gasket, it's got a bad cylinder head, and that's worst case scenario, like absolute worst case.
Yeah, that is worst case, and I mean, considering all the smoke and the lack of coolant in the radiator, I think it is fair to say, but obviously we want to confirm our suspicions. I guess let's just hop right into the compression test.
Do you actually know how to go about this? Because I've never watched a video on it or done it.
Yeah, so the compression test process is pretty easy. We take off the EFI fuse, that way, you know, no fuel gets pumped in. From there, we're then going to just take off the piping here so we can access the spark plug holes, take out the spark plugs, and then we're just going to turn the engine over and see what the compression's like. So we already took out the fuse, but in this car, the fuel pump fuse is back here versus some other cars where they'd be in the front. Well, guys, just for a little bit of context, when Jesus first got the car, I did think it was odd that it would break up slightly when we were off throttle.
Even partial throttle on the low end.
And we actually just assumed it was like a wiring issue, and the reason we thought that is, well, just let me show you. So right there, we actually have some corroded wiring, and this, I believe, is the IAC valve. So yeah, in a nutshell, we just thought we had some wiring we had to go through, which wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but now after experiencing the overheating, we suspect there was some other issue going on. So now that we got everything out of the way, which I will note, we actually struggled with this a little bit because the couplers are super tight, and this one was actually really old. But we got everything out of the way. So next we're gonna take the coil packs out, take the spark plugs out of every of these cylinders, and then we can finally compression test it. You don't actually have to do this on every single car in terms of taking like the part of the intake off. It's just for us to have access to these middle cylinders, we had to. Just actually as a good little example, on this MR2 here, I actually wouldn't have to do anything besides just undoing these spark plug cables. We got all 6 of them out, and all of the spark plugs look pretty much the same besides this one, which was on the back end. It looks like it was leaking a little bit on the valve covers. You just thread this in, and when she stops turning, she stops turning. And she's done. We'll make sure the car's in neutral. We're gonna turn it over and just see where the compression's at. You're good. That came out to, I had a bit of a faux pas there, so we'll put that over there. It's just at about 160. It's at 150, you're good. Cylinder number 3 is at 150. Yeah, there's a little bit of an issue.
Like 110?
140. You don't want more than 10% variance off the top of my head. I don't know those numbers. If we had 160 in the front and then 140 in the back, I actually wonder if as we go further back, they're gonna get worse.
Yeah, because that was cylinder 4.
I mean, I don't know RBs, but with some cars, just based on the design, the rear of the engine or the head has a tendency to get really hot. So we'll see. It could also just be that that's where the cooling jackets are at. So if that's where the head gasket failed, it'd make more sense for the back ones to have lower compression.
It's actually the same thing with the Miata. The way the coolant's routed, it doesn't hit the back as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. You're right. Because the Miata initially was supposed to, the engine is from a transverse mounted car, not longitudinal. Stop. 140.
140?
Yeah. We're good. Do you hear that?
Oh, the beep comes from when I'm turning the car off.
No. The bubbling.
Yeah, that's noise I would hear when I turn the car off.
Yeah, this is right here. I don't know how well it picks up on camera, but right here is the overflow tank, and you can hear the bubbling.
Remember how I was telling you, like, I'd hear a noise yesterday, like when I get off work and turn the car off? Mm-hmm. That was the noise I was hearing.
Yeah, and yeah, that's...
Because I didn't realize that was bubbling, so I'm like, oh, because you know how sometimes when you turn your car off, it'll just like creak for like a minute or two, or like 30 seconds, like you hear something, so like, okay, yeah, that might just be the car, so I didn't think much of it.
Yeah, and now that you're touching on that, what I'm thinking happened with the car is that the whole time we've had it, it's actually just had a small head gasket leak. Because to be completely transparent, I never checked the coolant, because like in the 2 weeks that I had it, I drove it for 1 week, and then the other week it sat until I had a chance to look at the brakes. And then the time you had it, you never bothered to check the coolant outside of the overflow. Yeah. So it was leaking coolant in the combustion chamber is what I'm thinking. Yeah. And because we never checked it, that's what caused the overheating.
Yeah. Shit. The crappy part is this was preventable if I had just actually looked over my car properly.
Well, if I would have looked at it too, and that doesn't change the fact that it has a small head gasket leak. This is kind of the hard part about it, is because it's an NA, and then we do have questions about whether or not things are interchangeable. I think it'd be a fair bet to say that we drove it for so long, odds are we probably cracked the head or something like that on top of the head gasket. Would we be able to find a head? Is it worth fixing? I mean, I don't know. It's a sure car, because like there's the other question of, do you want to get into a project? I mean, I know you're looking to buy a house in the next couple of years as well.
Even before this had happened, I'd been thinking about selling the car. So this is just like, whoa, another nail in the coffin.
If anything, that's where you're leaning, but like I said, we'll walk away and come back from it, because at the end of the day, I don't think we ever want to make decisions when we're annoyed. Whoa, what the what? Did you just see that?
Yeah, it looks like shot all over the place.
All right, guys, before we put this back, I got to give you guys a better shot, because it's just like, it's like a fountain out there. This right here is going to be the final resting place for the Skyline until we come to a definitive answer, or Jesus does. But I mean, honestly, it's probably going to get sold.
Yeah, just from the talks we're having, that's more or less what I'm leaning towards.
Well, the bigger thing is you got the car as a cool daily driver.
Yeah.
You never wanted a project out of it. Yeah. So kind of is what it is. But I guess we'll get over to the MR2. For context, my initial plan with this was to literally strip it all down of any of the good parts. What has essentially happened over the last few weeks is no one wants the parts. I've put adverts online. There has been interest, but essentially no one's actually ever paid for parts. They just don't want them. I know it's kind of dark in here, but pretty much this garage is just filled with parts, because there's the bucket seat. I have tires. I should have rims in the next week or so. Jesus has his parts here. And then at my house, I also have my garage filled with parts. So the reality is I can't just strip it down and then have these parts sitting around, especially with nothing selling. So what I'm going to do instead is just take the things that I think are cool and I really like. So these little mud flaps, I'm a big fan of. And then the hood. So when I get my shop, I can hang this up, which is super cool. I'm keeping the visor there for my office. And then these seats, I don't know what I'm doing with them, but they're nice. Not really going to take much. Oh, I also might take the rims. So the rims are actually, they're in really good shape. The downside is they're kind of ugly to me, but I think someone out there could actually make use of them. So I won't take them today because I don't have Steelies to put on these, but I have Steelies at Jesus's house.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm going to take those Steelies, put them on here, and then take the rims, but that will be at a later time. We're starting with the hood. Oh, does this smell disgusting in here? The hood itself is actually in pretty good shape. This is probably one of the few body panels that is, because like if you go anywhere on the car, so like right here is the fender, and you could just see how it's rusting. Taking off the hood on this seems pretty straightforward. There's one bolt here, another there, same thing on the other side, and then I just have to undo this.
Black thing.
Oh yeah.
This is surprisingly light.
Well guys, this is pretty much everything I'm gonna keep from the car. As I mentioned, these will be in my office. The visor, which is super cool, will be in my office. The hood, it's gonna be hung up in my shop once I get a shop. And then those seats, I'm mainly keeping them because they're super nice. If someone wants them, I'd sell them for cheap, but if not, I'll just keep them in the garage and use them to sit in. And this is pretty much the last time you guys will see this car. I'm not taking much of it, and honestly, it's, as I mentioned, the condition is just super rough. You know, the interior is probably the biggest disappointment. I don't want to touch it, but one of the things I discovered is that if you look right there, that is actually part of the carpet. Anyways, what happened was rats got on here and they started eating up the carpet. So some parts of the carpet are super thin and other parts are like how it normally should be. And then on top of that, under this specific carpet, it is literally just caked in rat poop, and it is so gross. So like none of this stuff is worth anything to me. Well guys, today's video I guess doesn't really end on the happiest note, since we're saying goodbye to that car, and it's probably the last time you guys will see the Skyline. Sucks, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.